So let's get into this shit.
That are quite.
Let's do this. Okay, let's go through her post first.
Some schools have implemented Black Lives Matter curriculum.
See how it says like New York City schools in there? In New York, you guys are annoying.
Part of BLM's Week of Action includes 13 guiding principles, some of which include globalism, queer affirming, and transgender affirming.
Yeah.
Let me remind you, this is being taught to children.
Okay. So we're already start with the anti-LGBTQ fear-mongering. So before we continue on her very ignorant anti-LGBT post, let's actually read through the 13 values and let's contextualize them. The 13 guiding principles, okay? Now, these are a little preachy, a little but whatever. Let's read through them. Okay, so the first one is restorative justice, okay? And I imagine this is curriculum that educates people on this. So restorative justice. We are committed to collectively, lovingly, and courageously. Is that a word? Courageously. That's a word. I'm an idiot. Working vigorously for freedom and justice for Black people and, by extension, all people. As we forge our path, we intentionally build and nurture a beloved community that is bonded together through a beautiful struggle that is restorative, not depleting. Okay, pretty vague, but that sounds like a pretty solid message. All right. Empathy. We are committed to practicing empathy. We engage comrades with the intent to learn about and connect with their context. This comrade shit's annoying. Fucking communists, you guys are annoying as hell. All of you annoy the shit out of me. I don't like you guys. Well, you guys are fine, but it's just annoying. It's ridiculous. Loving engagement. We are committed to embodying and practicing justice, liberation, and peace in our engagements with one another. Okay, that sounds fine again. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Diversity. We are committed to acknowledging, respecting, and celebrating differences and commonalities. So that's these are very vague terms. If I had to talk about diversity, I would talk about, in the context of BLM being taught, I would imagine it's about unity across all races, as well as different, I guess you call them colors in the Black community, because colorism is a thing. Very new, or is a newer concept. It's very interesting. Comrade has many definitions. I know comrade just means friends. I know that, but it's like a common fucking little communist talking point. Freaking silly. Globalism. We see ourselves as part of the global Black family and are aware of the different ways we are impacted or privileged as Black folks who exist. I hate the F-O-L. Oh, it's a K. I thought it said folks. Now my bias is showing. Anyway, we see ourselves as part of a global Black family. We are aware of the different ways we are impacted, our privilege as Black folks who exist in different parts of the world. Okay, so this is actually a really interesting one. Because people are going to focus on the globalism part, which is a lot of people get upset by that. Realistically, we are we are expanding. Globalism is going to be a thing. We already engage in these types of practices where we trade with other countries. It's necessary to sustain ourselves. But if you read between the lines here, this talks about Black people in a little bit of depth. The narrative in the United States is that all Black people are victims of systemic racism, and while that's not true, even if you don't agree with what I just said, at the very least, they're not all impacted the same, right? So a non-Native Black American coming to America isn't going to be impacted in the same way as a Native Black American is, because they were generally victims of slavery. And this actually it's very interesting and kind of supports that point of realistic, the reality of life. It also talks about the struggles of different people across the world, different Black people across the world. I think this is a generally positive point. I just don't know how it's going to be expanded on. Queer affirming. We are committed to fostering a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather, the belief that all in the world are heterosexual unless she or he or they disclose otherwise. Now, I guess that's a fair point. Honestly, if we didn't have the concept of sexuality and we just kind of did what we did, more how I would prefer it, there wouldn't be this distress associated with coming out and whatnot. Now, we don't do that. It's the norm to come out, whatever. But what I say more than anything else, other than that narrative specifically, is that listen, not for nothing, this is a classic example, and this is the perfect situation, right? Where people constantly say, well, the meme BLM, right? Every time we talk about BLM or somebody talks about BLM, there's like a counter argument that's like, oh, well, is this not BLM? Like, for instance, when it comes to police interactions with black people, that's what BLM fights for. But then all of a sudden, if like two black guys kill each other, they're like, well, why isn't BLM talking about this, right? I thought it's like, okay. And that's the thing. They're starting to branch out. And one of the biggest issues in the black community is anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. So this is actually doing what people keep asking, which is to talk more about just expand or go beyond just talking about police interactions and black people. Because there's historically there's issues of anti-LGBTQ like a narrative in the black community. Yeah. Trans affirming. We are committed to embracing and making spaces for trans siblings. I don't like that. Siblings part, I'm assuming they're talking about it in like the terminology of like a family mentality, like, you know how black people call each other brother and sister, you know what I mean? I'm assuming it's like that, like more of a community oriented thing. Same way like we're in like some Asian cultures they call like just old guys grandpa and shit, because it's just like more of a community society. To participate and lead, we are committed to being self-reflective or reflexive and doing the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift black trans folks, especially black trans women who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence, which is true. And also, again, this kind of affirms what I was just saying, right? Because like black trans women, the reason that they receive disproportionately or a disproportionate amount of hatred is because the black community is behind when it comes to like LGBTQ issues. Collective value. We are guided by the fact that by all Black Lives Matter, regardless of actual perceived sexual identity, gender expression, economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigrant. Okay, so this is just saying like, hey, black people. It seems to be saying, hey, black people are diverse, but we have an equal value. It's like, okay, it's totally fine so far. Some of the language is a little progressive. I don't really like. It's a little like, meh. But like, it's not bad. Intergenerational. We are committed to fostering an intergenerational and communal network free from ageism. We believe that all people, regardless of age, show up with the capacity to learn, lead and learn. I don't know. I didn't know that this was something that was needed. But okay, fine. Black families. We are committed to making our spaces family friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We are committed to dismantling the patriarchal practice that requires mother to work double shifts, that require them to mother in private, even as they participate in justice work. Okay, this is like a little bit weird and loaded because I feel like it's kind of a negative. It's kind of like an incorrect understanding of like how this shit works. In your typical modern household, I would argue, like, it depends. So, like, there are people who still do like the old school way where like the mother stays at home and works with the kids, and the father actually goes and he works like a job, right? And then that's shifting. Nowadays, I would argue that like the median or the average is the father working one or two jobs, and then the mother working like a part-time job, and then taking care of the kid, with the father taking care of the kid as well. It's usually more of a 50-50 relationship. I would say that the men usually still do make more money. Men just gravitate towards jobs that make more money. Women usually just have like a job that kind of picks up the pace. I think a bigger issue with this, because like, listen, there is we do have like kind of a patriarchy in the United States. I wouldn't say it's like a drastic one. It just means a more male dominated society. And since men are the ones who make more of the money, since money literally equals power, men do generally have a more prominent say in society, especially in less educated spaces, right? More conservative spaces and less educated spaces. And when I say conservative, that's not just like, people who like religiously conservative people in general, not just Christians, but all religions are generally very patriarchal in their values. I think that the biggest problem, like, honestly, it's really just about opening and inviting women into spaces, and also men into, like, women into masculine spaces and men into feminine spaces. The Hindu religion, I don't know, maybe. I'm not really super educated on them. I know like the Islamic, Jewish, Christian religions or Catholic religions, those are all very conservative religions. Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that idea of like, because basically when you break that down, it's just like, hey, men should take more responsibility and should share the work more equally with men. Women and men should share the responsibility more equally. Black villages. We are committed to disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, and especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Now, this is interesting. A lot of the language here is very like communist suggestive, which is annoying. But on the idea of dismantling the nuclear family, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? I think that the nuclear family works. I don't see an issue with it working. I don't think that people should be forcefully going away from that. But we do know that, especially in the Black community, there is an issue with single motherhood rates. And this is across like all communities, specifically poor communities. But I mean, even really just middle class. I mean, like the divorce rate's like crazy high, right? So obviously, we could do one of two things. We can either force a nuclear family, which to me sounds, I don't think that we should be forcing anybody to do anything, or we can provide alternative structures that will allow people to be successful, even if they don't grow up in like a traditional, nuclear family, right? That makes sense to me. If you have a big issue with the fact that there's like a high single motherhood rate, then rather than saying we should force the father to stay, which is something we should, the father should be taking responsibility, but we should also focus on allowing individuals who don't have fathers to still be raised in a way that allows them to be successful. Nuclear families like mother, father, I think like two kids kind of a deal, right? So yeah, I don't really see this as a problem. Unapologetically Black. We are unapologetically Black in our positioning and affirming that Black Lives Matter. We need not qualify our position. To love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is a necessary prerequisite for wanting the same for others. That's fine. Black women. We are committed to building a Black woman affirming space free from sexism, misogyny, and male centeredness. This is pretty decent too. So, like we talked about before, these are things that people don't like talking about. We talked about the lack of inclusivity of LGBTQ people in the Black community. Well, there's also like a lack of like women representation in the Black community. Like it's just, and this is really gets into like the idea of intersectionality. Advocating for Black rights while also advocating for like trans and women's rights. You can make the argument that it might be spreading a little too thin and it might be kind of difficult to push this narrative. And obviously you can even see people in the Black community rejecting this idea because they're, generally uncomfortable with LGBTQ people and even women. But it's not a bad message. It's probably a necessary message. Overall, this is a little preachy, maybe. I don't think that it's necessarily that bad. Talks about some of the real things that we need to talk about, or the Black community needs to talk about in general. Which is stuff that everybody really could, I know that, like I keep saying, the Black community has an issue when it comes to LGBTQ rights and even women's rights, but like there's like obviously there's white spaces as well. More conservative spaces struggle with, homophobia, transphobia, and sexism. So honestly, I don't think forcing the dead to leave. That's not what we said. I've literally no. Okay, listen. I've had different experience with my dad because he died when I was young. I've never had a father and was an alcoholic. No, what are you talking about? That's terrible. Nobody's talking about forcing the dad to leave. I don't know if you're saying that. They're talking about opening up spaces for if the dad's not there to still have a support system. I was pretty clear about that. No, you guys are not listening. You guys are reacting emotionally to what we said. So I explained this very clearly, and I'm going to explain it again. Okay, I said this very clearly. You guys really need to listen because like you're hearing something and then you're getting upset by it, but you're not listening to what I'm saying. Okay, they're not talking about completely deconstructing the nuclear family. They're talking more about implementing support to families that don't adhere to the nuclear family. That's what they're talking about. They're not saying let's just get rid of fathers. They're more focusing on the fact that like if there's no father, we should have an alternative support system so kids can actually be successful. When you specifically and forcefully support the nuclear family, what you're saying is that you don't really care about the success of a family unless it adheres to the nuclear family structure. So they're just simply saying let's provide support outside of the requirement of the nuclear family so that like people can still be successful. Does that make more sense? Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Okay. So let's continue to go through this now that we've gotten through the 13 principles of the Black Lives Matter, whatever, the guiding principle. Okay. Let's get through this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's kill those dogs.
There are two principles in particular that are quite disturbing. One is the Black villages, disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended family.
It's important to say the requirement is a very important word, guys. It's very, very, very important word. Okay? That's not advocating for the destruction of the nuclear family. It's simply just acknowledging, saying that we're disrupting the requirement that there needs to be a nuclear family for success. Hold on a second. This is very annoying. I'm trying to do fucking work. Okay, let's get back into it.
And villages. That sounds strange.
Not really.
Disrupting the family structure? Okay. Black families, making our spaces family friendly and enabling parents to fully participate with their children while dismantling patriarchal practice.
Patriarchal. Oh, okay.
Sounds like you want to get rid of the father. That's weird.
Not really. I think that if you looked at that situation with any level of depth, you'd understand that that's not about removing the father. It's about battling what we would consider patriarchal practices of like a male-dominated spaces, right? That's it. That's pretty much it.
Anybody else seeing a trend? Some schools have implemented Black Lives Matter curriculum as part of.
Yeah, so that's her video. Very ignorant.